All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Truth Warrior. I hope you have all had at least some time to start checking out the show I just did yesterday with Michael Tsarion on the history of the alliances between the Western Marxists, communists, fascists, basically the totalitarians, and the East, the Islamists, and so much more. And it turned out, and Michael just jumped on last minute. I literally messaged him. I was preparing the show that I'm going to do now for you. And then I'm like, maybe Michael can jump on and help me explain this because this is something that desperately needs to be explained, especially given the current happenings. There's no better time like the present. And he did that and so much more. I was literally blown away. And the man never fails to bring the sauce. He never fails to bring stuff that I've never heard of myself. I've interviewed the guy since 2009. I've worked with him. He and I are colleagues. We research together, and he always brings new stuff. It's unbelievable. You have to go and watch that show. That show would probably be even more important than this one, although I think this one will help, at least for people who are new to this subject of Islamo-Communism. What is that? We're going to get into it. I also had prepared a bunch of clips of Trevor Loudon, which we did an interview on Unslaved back in 2016. Can you believe it? That's when we first started doing these shows. And he goes through some really important information in that interview. And also in the show I did with Michael, I played a trailer of Trevor Loudon's film, getting into the enemies within. We hear about the internal enemies or the domestic enemies, the embedded enemies behind the gates. He does a whole film about it. And in 2016 was connecting the West, the Marxists, the Western Marxists and the communists with the Islamic regimes. And we're talking about the extreme jihad Islamic brand, the particular cult brand of Islam that is highly weaponized. And it's built to, it's morphed and changed in these alliances to be the perfect weapon to get in behind the doors, behind the Trojan horse into the West, to help bring about the dream of all of these totalitarian groups, which is the destruction of the West and America, which is the only thing that stands in their way. And with that goes the rest of the Western world. And the way Michael broke down the nuance, the history, the stuff that people don't know about, it's mind-boggling. And guys, the show he did, 90 minutes. I couldn't believe we did it in 90 minutes. So it's a short listen for people like me who listen to like 4 or 5 hour podcasts. It's to the point as much as it can be, and it's a summary of what Michael and I have been documenting along with our amazing guests over the years on Unslaved. The details, combing through the books, validating the sources, doing it again, heaping mound after mound of evidence and facts and information that is not known to the Western mind. Why is that? That was one of the questions Michael asked. Why don't you know about any of this stuff? How have you not heard of this? How are you a conservative or freedom advocate or truther or libertarian or even classical liberal in the West, and you have never heard of these alliances behind the scenes, specifically the one that is right in front of our faces right now, which is this Islamo-Communism? So when you say that term, we got to flesh it out and explain it. And that's what I'm here to do, is give you the backstory and kind of make it a little more, I guess, accessible, in the beginning here, so that you could use this as a companion guide to the show that Michael did. And I can help validate some of the points he was trying to make and hopefully give you guys something to think about. And as always, I'll leave you to your own devices on this. You can take it or leave it. You can follow up on the research. You can choose to not do that. It's totally, the ball is in your court. I do want to ask for some help from you guys. If you have loved my show and you are enjoying this content, you want to learn more about it, please help me share it. That's all you got to do. Just share it. I'm getting creamed on X right now in terms of shadow banning. I think I get like 2 or 3 interactions now on posts. that I think are pretty good. Maybe it's either that I suck at what I do and I don't have anything to offer and the world has just rejected me, or it's possible that some of the subjects that I discuss are not wanting to get out for some reason. So if you could help a man out, help me share it out to friends of yours that might be curious in this or about this stuff. Only if you find value. If you don't find value, thanks for coming out. So there we go. Let's dive in. I thought I would do a bit of a mixture here. I've got, so I've done pieces of this in various shows that I've already got on my Substack. And by the way, that is the best way to also support the show. Go subscribe on Substack. I got plenty of free stuff over there, but definitely have some high quality paid content that is the research that I spend hours and hours and years and whatnot collecting and then presenting and putting out there. So it does a good service to help me out over there. And also I think it's a fantastic platform. But yeah, at the very least, help me share this if you're finding value. That would really help a lot. And what I've done over on my Substack, and I'll link it all again here below. I did put it all in the description of the show I did with Michael. You go check that out. In the description of that is where the real research begins. I just gave you guys the head start of where I went to and where I think you should go. And, you know, it should be a research mission of a lifetime if you really decide to commit yourself to learning this information. And you can get it all there. And the one that I've got 3 of my slideshows up here from those presentations. I've got the occult history of communism. So we got to get into that a little bit. I've got the Islamo-Communism presentation that I prepared. And I actually don't think I just did this presentation solely by itself for my channels. I think I did this on another show. So I kind of want to go through some of that. And then also the dark side of Tibetan Buddhism, because there's a point that I want to make in today's presentation to help everybody navigate the minefield of the subject that we're about to get into here. So if I were to pull up this first one here, let's just go through a couple slides. I'm not going through the whole thing. There's a few I want to point out. This question, right, that Michael had asked in a show we did a couple of years ago now, it stood out. And this was the exact wording he used. All nations are deceived about the origin of the ancient feuds that have split the world. How the hell have you never heard of this? How do we not know this? I'm talking especially in MAGA, in the conservative movement, in the libertarian movement, in the freedom truth movement. The sad news that I have to tell you, from going from a state of naivety with this to growing in knowledge over time and committing to the research, is that you're not going to be told about this story by the mainstream media, clearly. You're not going to be told about this story in most of your Western universities or colleges or high schools, definitely. You're not going to be told about this in your churches, your shrines, your synagogues. What am I missing? Your temples, right? You're not going to be told about this stuff there unless you get lucky, you know? And the sad news is you're also not going to get told about this by the alternative truth, freedom movement, community, whatever you want to call that. It's a mishmash of people that all have very different perspectives. It has been highly infiltrated. And I think that actually speaks to the fact that it was successful at countering the mainstream media once upon a time with factual information that was actually enlightening people about their world. And then it got turned on its head because it got infiltrated by a bunch of Marxists and ideologues or useless idiots who are adhering to the demands of their sponsors on their shows, who maybe they didn't research the origin of, or I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's ideologues, people that are just like, yeah, I'm biting into this narrative that I'm being handed. So all nations are deceived about the origins of the ancient feuds that have split the world. I mean, I could say that to you logically. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it does explain the history of war. All the people that don't want war anymore, all the peaceniks. Give peace a chance. You know, you got all the woke right on X right now teaming up with the woke left to say, yeah, we actually did we just become best friends? Did we just become best friends? Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yep. They're buddies now on this point. And they'll be like, yeah, we totally disagree on everything else. Like they're totally about, but this. And it's all completely misguided. And it's this that is at the root of all of it. It's ignorance. And when Michael's mentioning this, and if you listen to the show we did yesterday, you'll understand the weight of this, because the way he came on and just put everybody on blast. All nations, not just one nation, not just a few, like all nations are deceived by design. We have some corrupted priestly cabals that have been running riot in our world for centuries. We're doing a whole thing on the Dead Sea Scrolls right now on Unslaved. I just recorded part 6, by the way, and it's going to be up soon. And that's a series not to be missed. It dovetails with this one as well on many fronts, because we're looking on Unslaved, not just at one religious sect over here and one over there. We're looking at them all, comparing them side by side. What the question on Unslaved, the question of this show, what is the nature and origin of evil, criminality, war, conflict, genocide, self-destructiveness? What is the origin of it? Why are we the species on the planet that is the one suffering from this problem? And you can thank those priestly cabals for kicking it off. And then that whole system got spilled into the political mainstream system. And then fast forward a couple centuries, and here we are right now. So old, it's new. So we got to be upping our level of understanding about the ancient feuds that have split the world. If you want to have any understanding about how the contradictions right in front of our face are happening, and how so many people have bit down on pure, unadulterated lies. So I'm going to go through some of these. We're going to try to make this one quick because I got a lot to get through. Got some videos and whatnot, but here it is. Islamo-Communism. What is that? What even is that? Well, we do know something. You can just go, I'm just using mainstream sources for you guys. You can clearly go and check out all the books and all the sources that are not mainstream that I could recommend. But just to keep it, for people that are constantly going to be like, well, that's false information. Like, look, even in the mainstream Wikipedias and encyclopedias and libraries, you can scout out this information. You can learn about it. Islamic socialism. It would have been something that was unheard of in previous eras. But here we are. It's actually a legitimate thing. This is just the Wikipedia mention. Islamic socialism is a political philosophy that incorporates Islamic principles into socialism. So they are compatible then, you're saying? As a term, it was coined by various Muslim leaders to describe a more spiritual form of socialism. So you see how you get the theology mixed into the politics? That's always a big sign of some cult activity. Islamic socialists believe that the teachings of the Quran and Muhammad, especially the zakat, are not only compatible with principles of socialism, but also very supportive of them. So we're talking here about a particular sect, left-wing Islam. Now, there are conservative Islam, just like there's left-wing Jews, which are a big problem in Israel and in the West and in New York, who just voted in an Islamo-communist. What? And then you've got Christian socialism. You've got, it's gone everywhere. It's infected the priestly cabals, right? So it's quite a story to be told about how we got to this point. But specifically this Islamo-communism, this seems to be one of the major weapons of choice of the high table cabal that sits atop all of these public square religions and political philosophies and whatevers. The high flyers, the watchers that sit above them, the secret combines, the secret cults, the occult, they are going to benefit from using the aims of these various groupings, and they're going to take advantage of them in different ways at different times. And this is what this history is that we've documented. Now, you have to if you really want to start the process of understanding the secret society aspect of it, and basically how this revolutionary doctrine got introduced, at least in the modern era. Right now on Enslaved, we're going well back into history to tell you about where it came from in ancient history. But just, coming at a more modern angle, you've got James Billington here, who was a librarian in Congress and who wrote the book Fire in the Minds of Men. And he was talking about the nature of socialism, communism, fascism, essentially what he called the revolutionary faith. So here's a little statement from him. The revolutionary faith came out of the wilderness and into power in its most violent and messianic form in the wake of World War I. This is huge because of where, if you watch Michael's interview, he gets into that part of the history. Now he goes before that as well, and then leads you up to that point and then continues on to the modern time. So he gives you the full scale in a sort of generalized form. But Billington is also keying in here that, yeah, there's a major turn of events that took place after World War I that activated this new updated form of the revolutionary faith. I'm going to get into the version of it that came through the Philadelphia Lodge and some of these high-level Masonic orders that preceded the French Revolution. So we're talking 1700s, but James Billington starting at World War I. He continues, this bloody conflict delegitimized traditional authority and helped the national revolutionary tradition come to power in Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany, the social revolutionary faith in Lenin's and Stalin's Russia. So he's right away just telling you all that stuff about, communists and fascists and socialists, they're all fighting with each other or whatever. They're all just, as I've always been calling it, different flavors of the same Gatorade. It's all the same shit. These revolutions, he says, created dictatorships and modern totalitarianism. The most violent and authoritarian movements in Germany and Russia each intensified one form of the revolutionary faith by adopting significant elements of the other. Nazism was literally an abbreviation for National Socialism. This was another point Michael brought up, and he's like, we can't even have a conversation until we understand that what is Nazism? What is fascism? How does it differ between what went down in Italy versus what went down in Germany versus what was going down in America right now, or what's going down in Iran, for example, right? We're not going to know unless we know what that is. So you got to go on Enslaved. You can go get it on Substack, or you can go get it on the site, and you got to go check out a presentation Michael did called The Fool Society in the Fall of Germany. Like, put that one in your pipe and smoke it. Seriously. It's loaded with sources and quotes right from the Nazi regime itself, right from historians of the era. Sources that most people don't look up or have any time for. Well, we got to have time for it if we want to know what the hell's going on. Now, communism, he's talking about now, was defined as socialism in one country, one fortified fraternity with equality, the other equality with fraternity. So one fortified fraternity with equality and the other equality with fraternity. Same thing, just inverted. Each exemplified the distinctive characteristic of the revolutionary faith that the extremes touch each other. See, because your political spectrum is not a straight line. It's actually a circle where the extreme ends are a bunch of secret handshaking assholes. Each subordinated liberty to a new and far more totalistic form of authority than had existed previously. The revolutionary faith was sustained in power at great cost to human life and freedom. So that is what's at stake. If we do not understand this, that is what is at stake. The entire life that you know and enjoy, that your parents knew and enjoy, that even though, yeah, we've got our complaint, there's all this stuff going on, compare it to any other time in history and anywhere else in the world, and you're, even with the corruption, even with the infiltration, you're still ahead of the game of our forebears when it comes to thriving, living longer lives, having access to technology and information. The fact that you can sign into a podcast like this right now, and that you can even read and write and be literate, is a freaking blessing. We should be grateful. We shouldn't be forgetting how good we have it, and that we get to fight World War III at home in our pajamas by simply upgrading our knowledge, at least for now, until the revolutionary faith hits the tinderbox and they decide to go hot war on the street, which is what I think is planned. But hopefully there's some mechanisms in place to stop it, because good news, folks, not everybody in government, not everybody in the military, not everybody in the intelligence, not everybody in the churches, not everybody in the religious temples agree with this totalist view of the world. They don't agree with the left-wing politics that have snuck behind the gates. There's people in the Vatican that disagree with the direction that the Vatican went when it got infiltrated by these Reds. There are a few that we can see from the Islamic world that are trying to reform Islam and trying to upgrade it and trying to cleanse out these elements, but they're very few and far between. But we don't get to see the whole picture here in the West anyways. But either way, there are there's efforts within Judaism to fix this as well, contrary to the anti-Semites who just put a whole general blanket on every sect of Judaism or every Jew, which is ill-advised if you want to be in concert with the facts. You want to actually not indict innocent people of crimes that are done by people who are not so innocent. We're targeting the people who are the guilty parties. We're targeting the ideology that is the basis of their ideology, or of their actions and of their agenda. What's the ideology at the root of it? Everybody's fighting for a cause. Well, what's the ideology that makes the cause what it is? That's what we need to look at. So you got to get into some James Billington. You want to go to, I got to get through this quick. Just want to kind of touch on this. I'm doing whole presentations here. I've got the symbol of the raised fist as the background here. Well, what is that? You're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it in feminist marches. You're seeing it in LGBT marches. You're seeing it in Ukraine marches. You're seeing it now with the Palestine marches that shifted very quickly to the Iranian regime marches, in the Mexico marches, in the, in the whole thing. You're seeing the raised fist. Well, what is that? Well, to the average Joe, they're just like, well, that's just me being fed up with the system. And I'm just like, I want to punch the system. Symbolically illiterate, unfortunately. We need to become understanding about there's what you think that means. And then there's what the people that designed the very specific symbol in its original intent, what it means to them. And then there's what it means to the dark occultists that have the manual on symbolic literacy and what it means to them. So we better learn about this. I mean, this is it from the Soviet Union. And Michael was delineating the difference between Soviet or even Maoist style communism and the differences in the Islamic version of communism. It's a very specific brand of the same Gatorade, but it's unique. It is unique, but they're united on the basic same pillars: destruction of the West, destruction of America, destruction of the family unit, and then you go, wait, what? Islam is not destruction of the family unit. No, the Islamists, the extremists I'm talking about, they don't adopt that for themselves. They're cozying up to these communists because they're like, well, it's the destruction of the Western family units, which they know would be one of the main things to precipitate the fall of the West. So it's kind of like when they say peace. Well, we want peace. We are peaceful. Yeah, peace and quiet once all of the competitors to our worldview are eliminated and we are the installed regime. That's the peace that the totalist wants. When they say peace, and this goes for whether we're talking about these radical Islamists, whether we're talking about globalists, whether we're talking about guys from the Club of Rome, when they're out there talking about, well, we got to find a way to cull the human race, but let's do it in a peaceful way. Yeah, peace and quiet when everybody's dead and gone and you can rule over the ashes. That's the peace that a psychopath is looking for. Okay? And a psychopathic doctrine wouldn't be any different. Just a few examples. More raised fists. You got on the bottom left, I always point this out, that's the Socialist International symbol. You got the Rosicrucian Masonic rose being held by the closed fist. And it's just a variation of the raised fist with the rose over up at the top. And you got your Soviet stuff. And then, of course, in the Masonic halls, who were infested with this revolutionary faith back in the 1700s. And that's admitted by Masons, by the way, by some of the top Masons and Dukes at the time. So it's not just me saying it. So there it is, Socialist International logo. Here's your Black Lives Matter. They use it. There you go. a blatant Marxist organization. They're like admitting it, and all the people that founded it are all living in mansions in Beverly Hills now. No justice has occurred. You got the Ukraine version. There's Stephen King. Anybody checked in on Stephen King lately? How's he doing, man? It's got to be a rough time. You got the feminist marches with the pussy hats. They love that. I know, got the upside down cross mixture in there too. Interesting. Future's female. What are you even talking about? You got your abortion thing going on with the raised fist. There's all the women standing in solidarity with the raised fist. There's the trans rights or human rights. Same gang. Funding comes from the same places. Bottom line ideology the same. Just giving you a background of some of the decor in the homes of these leftists. Oh, there's the coronavirus one. We're fighting coronavirus. Remember that during the pandemic? Lots of raised fists during that. And then it was about raising your arms. And now in Canada, it's about we're raising our elbows. Elbows up. So we're either raising fists or raising elbows. They really like just lifting their arms over their head. Although these people do not have the muscle definition to hold it for very long, which is very evident, sadly. There's your climate raised fists, and with the Roman Grecian sort of cult vibe going on. Like, who came up with the costumes on this one? Someone that understands some symbolism. Here's your Free Palestine, raised fists all over those marches. They're all funded by George Soros, who doesn't give a shit about Palestine. There you go. Here we go. We stand with Palestine in Toronto, Canada. Like, that's interesting to me. Here we go. It's just everywhere. It's everywhere. I saw this stuff all over the place. I was even downtown Victoria and I was watching the Palestinian marches going on, and it's literally everywhere. There's all these little desks and kiosks with the Canadian Communist Party that's just out there literally handing out paraphernalia to all the peaceful Palestinian protesters. Why are they cozying up with this group? Right? Free Palestine, revolutionary communist group, like it's right in your face. Then in Palestine, which Michael went into the history of that, and that might be a new one for some people. You got to go fact check that. It's incredible, the history that we've been lied about regarding that area, because it's talking about the history of the Ottoman Empire that nobody reads about. You ever read about the Ottoman Empire in your free time? Hopefully people on this show are already starting to dig that up and get into that history of that incredibly important period of time and what actually created that whole thing with Palestine. Now, even if you don't take that history on board, you could have said, well, then at some point that Palestinian movement was captured by these communists and these Islamists. Fine. You could go either way, but either way, here we are. The symbolism never lets you down. Neither does the rhetoric, neither do the actions of these groups. Here's the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Palestinian Marxist-Leninist organization. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is a secular Palestinian Marxist-Leninist and revolutionary socialist organization founded in 1967 by George Habash. And I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just kind of scanning it for you guys, just giving you, this is just the overview. Now, this is what I want to get into. This is super important for me personally. This was a big one. Michael was speaking about something that everybody needs to go and research if they want to understand this, which is these young movements. And he started off, and so we got young Italy, young Turkey, young this, young that. These were all financed by literally the Illuminati, guys. Giuseppe Mancini from Italy took over the mantle of the Illuminati. I forget the date. It was in the 1800s. And he was the one who led the charge to get all these young movements, the young Italy, the young this. And what were those movements? Well, we're going to read about it. But this one, the other two things Michael mentioned was something called the Pan-Turkic movement. Turkey, Ottoman Empire, reborn, and the Pan-Arabic movement. Is it any coincidence that the flag, you can get this right on Wikipedia, okay, and you can source it anywhere you want. The flag associated with Pan-Arabism is the Palestinian flag. Now, what is Pan-Arabism? Advocates of Pan-Arabism have often espoused Arab socialist principles and strongly opposed Western political involvement. Now, just when they say involvement, they also oppose Western ideals in general, clearly, right? That's just axiomatic. So that's interesting. And here's what I'm talking about. You got the Young Turks. Look at that. And this is what Michael was saying. When you go look up the Young movements, you're going to see the first image is a red flag. A red flag is up, guys. There it is. Inspired by the Young Italy political movement, the one started by the founder or one of the heads of the Illuminati, Giuseppe Mazzini, the Young Turks had their origins in secret societies. Like, I didn't write this, okay? Guys, I did not write this. This is the official recognized history. The Young Turks had their origins in secret societies of, wait for it, progressive medical university students and military cadets. Now, anybody that has watched my Cult of the Medics documentary series will realize why I'm highlighting that, and I'm just going to leave it there. Make sure you go watch the series. It's up for free on my Substack. So we got a bunch of secret societies that produced a political movement modeled after Young Italy that was founded by a major secret society member. And they had their origins in secret societies that were made up of progressive medical university students and military cadets, namely Young Ottomans. Young Ottomans. Driven underground, of course, along with all political dissent after the Constitution of 1876 was abolished and the first constitutional era. And here we go into the history. Okay. But I just want to let you go in and start to research this for yourself. A history that the Western mind cannot understand at this juncture. Young Italy. Here we go. President. Who is it? Giuseppe Mazzini, top right corner. This is 1800s. Yeah, I was right about the dates. Young Italy was an Italian political movement founded in 1831 by Giuseppe Mazzini. Blah, blah, blah. Where do I want to get to? Yeah, the movement is quoted, create a united Italian republic through promoting a general insurrection in the Italian reactionary states and in the lands occupied by the Austrian Empire. They were occupiers as well. It's the same rhetoric, guys. So it's left wing. This gets into the history. I'm not going to belabor you with reading it. Done this many times. Just go look up the history and the connections to these Masonic orders yourself. I guess also recommend, if you want the real deep dive on that one, guys, go to my occult history of communism. Oh, and more importantly, go to the occult conspiracy. I did 2 parts, the occult conspiracy. I'll link them below. Again, you can get them on my Substack. I get into that. This is what we were talking about. This is called Operation Atlas. Just want to get a little more specific with you. We were mentioning the collusion between the Vatican, the Nazis, and the Ayatollahs and Grand Muftis of the time. And there's Adolf Hitler sitting down with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, and they're absolutely just having a good old time together. So here you go, real quick. Operation Atlas, this is from a military dictionary, was the code name for an operation carried out by a special commando unit of the Waffen-SS, which took place in October 1944. It involved 5 soldiers, 3 who were previously members of, here you go, the Templar religious sect in Palestine, and 2 Palestinian Arabs, close collaborators of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini. The mission aimed at establishing an intelligence gathering base in Palestine, radioing information back to Germany, and also having German propaganda pumped into the Middle East for decades, and recruiting and arming anti-British Palestinians by buying their support with gold. So they financed the whole thing. It also aimed at fomenting tensions between Jews and Arabs, thus creating problems for the British mandatory authorities, which continues right up to this day. So Operation Atlas, go get into that. Here's just some of the people involved. He is a leader of the pro-Syria faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. He admits it, The Palestinian people does not exist. There is no difference between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We are all part of one people, the Arab nation. Just for political reasons, we carefully underwrite our Palestinian identity because it is of national interest for the Arabs to advocate the existence of Palestinians to balance Zionism or to destroy it. The existence of a separate Palestinian identity exists only for tactical reasons. So they don't mind telling you. But you're not going to hear that from Dave Smith, though. So just saying, you're only going to hear it here, or from the guy himself. You'll hear it from them. Yeah, this is just a graph, just to give you an idea. Judaism is that little sliver right over there. You can't really make out, and it's surrounded by Islam. But of course, Islam's going to tell you that they own the land over there. And then, of course, you get into the financing of all this stuff. So this is where you get the Western alliance, the Western allies of this Islamo-Communism. Groups behind Israel bashing protests backed Hamas. Attacks got 15 million plus from George Soros. I mean, so what is that? How do you gel these contradictions, guys? Where even everybody's siding with George Soros and the Illuminati right now? Wow. Rough week. Soros money laundering funneled into pro-Palestinian groups. I went through all that. Yeah, and this is just going into some democratic dark money holes, some interesting marriages taking place. Here's all the sponsors for all these Gaza protests that just flipped the script off of the Black Lives Matter, and before that it was the Wet Sweatin' in Canada, and before, it's just on and on. These left-wing groups go, and they just attach to any version of their ideology, even if it contradicts them in other regards. It's quite amazing when you really think about it. And then I document all of that. So let's come out of this. I don't want to keep going. This is just a different thing here. Now, before I do that one, I'm going to show you a couple things from this prezzo here. We'll do this just to balance some things out, because I don't want people to think that I'm just here attacking one group of people, and that's not the point. I'm attacking ideologies. That's what, if I'm attacking things, it's because I'm looking at bad ideas that have been planted in the subconscious of the mind and are now, these people are being programmed by the ideology. It's the same motivation that gave me to research all the cults that I researched. I wanted to know why do the cult leaders exist? What makes them tick? But more importantly, what about the cult followers that will follow Jim Jones to Jonestown and give their kids poison at his command? What kind of psyche would fall for that bullshit? Wait, and you find, oh my God, the vast majority of human beings throughout history have fallen for that bullshit and are still. Okay. Now it dawns on me. Now I'm getting some explanations as to why we're seeing the chaos happening in the world. But it's not just relegated to Islam. It's not just relegated to Judaism and Christianity. We also have the secular version of communism, socialism, fascism, right? There's secular people, non-religious types that are into this. And it's in Buddhism. Are you surprised? What do you think the CCP is? Right? So here is the pedo-Marxist in chief himself, the Dalai Lama. A lot of people don't know. That's a big secret. They're never going to tell you. So if that's triggering to you, you might want to know why. And, and then you just kind of dive into this research. I'm not going to do the whole presentation for you, but I mean, he says it openly. As for socioeconomic theory, I am Marxist. Yeah, I'm a Marxist, right? So they just admit it. They also critique the West. And in this presentation, I go through the work of Christine Chandler. I'm just trying to find something from her here. I want to bring you to her. I think I got to get to like this slide here. Let's go a little further down the chain. Yeah, it's quite a deep presentation. Just trying to find. Yeah, here you go. So this was a screen capture from her blog. There is Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats hobnobbing it up with these Karmapas who are very, very powerful and influential in Washington, D.C., in Hollywood, California. All the big wigs love these guys. And also, they make regular appearances and are deeply involved with the United Nations little prayer house there, the little inner sanctum that they've built for the world religion. And they're very much integrated into the World Economic Forum as well. So that's interesting. So this is a multi-headed hydra that we're dealing with. I hope nobody's surprised when they hear that. These are just some very sad testimonies of sexual abuse, brutal sexual abuse at the hands of these lamas by some of the students. What are some other things? Yeah, these are just getting into the tenets of Tibetan Buddhism that nobody knows about. They think it's all just about yoga or something and some meditation to some crystal bowls. It's a hell of a lot more than that. It's basically about how to create tantric sex slaves up at the top levels of the cult. And there's a lot of pedophilia. It's absolutely rampant. Oh, and look who else was really into this little cult. Keith Rainier, you know, the guy that branded women as sex slaves. Yeah, he was literally a personal friend to the Dalai Lama and had his own Karmapa as an advisor. And so where do you think he got his ideas that tantalized the female mind? It was the tantric Buddhist system that is also deeply wedded to the Eastern Illuminati faction, by the way. So there's your Nexium connection. These are all just bits from Christine Sham. She's talking about the Shambhala Institutes all over the place. You have no idea what's hiding under your beds over there. So Christine Chandler, she just says, yeah, so her website is xtibetanbuddhist.com, and she's got a book, and you got to read it, and you got to read her blog. I'm not sure if she's still writing, but it's good. And she just said this, my new mantra, fool the women. The men will follow, and you can conquer a nation, even the world. And what she means by the mantra is like for research, for understanding the goals of these Karmapas and these lamas, which are very similar to the goals of these imams and these ayatollahs, and then also these woke professors, and also like they all have something in common. And that's the whole point, is to get you to see this. It takes a trained eye, but it's starting to become more obvious. So I'm not going to keep going through this. That's a really fascinating presentation. You can get the full thing once again on my Substack. This one here. Oh yeah, this is the occult history of communism, where I am getting a cult of envy. That's what I think it really is. There's Henry Hazlitt summing it all up. The whole gospel of Karl Marx can be summed up in a single sentence: hate the man who is better off than you. So at the root, there's even more than just secret cults. What motivates the members of these secret cults? What motivates the Illuminati? What motivates the high table? What motivates the extremists pouring in through your borders right now? What's the motivational factor behind it? Is it really the religion? Like, is it the theology in the religion? Or does the theology that is what the light that is blinding the mind of these people, is that the means to an end? And the end is to have a way of exercising the inner envy, resentment, and hate that you feel towards yourself, towards nature, towards the world, and towards anyone that is not you. Anyone above your station, anyone that you perceive as getting even a little tiny bit ahead of you, you want to hammer that crab down to the bottom of the bucket, don't you? And this is the fire in the minds of men that James Billington was warning. This is the psychological roots of it. And you're only going to get that analysis from a few authors in little places here and there, or over on the Unslaved podcast, which we've done maybe 100 episodes on psychology over there about what creates the master-slave dynamic. That's an illuminating study if you want to understand the real mechanisms behind all this stuff. I'm not going to do all the heavy reading. I want to find some little bits here. You got to read this book by Kerry Bolton. Yeah, I'll do this. This is always good. It's always a good time for something from Galt's speech. This is something Ayn Rand called the hatred of the good for being good. The hatred of the good for being good. That could also be the hatred of the successful for being successful, the hatred of everybody, not you. If they're not miserable and you are, well, what can you do to bring them down to your level and have equity in misery, right? So she says it this way through John Galt. They, meaning the people who are the adherents to this cult of envy, they do not want to own your fortune. And I got to do one more preamble. If you live in a Western country right now and you're wondering why your cities and towns are all being completely changed to resemble Beirut or some of the Middle Eastern countries, I just want you to know that they're not here for your shit. In some senses, they're like, yeah, that's just the perks. The real people pushing this at the top. I'm not talking about every person, like every Muslim or everybody. I'm talking about at the cleric level. Okay. This is what they want for the West. This is what they want for you. They don't want your shit. They want you to not have your shit. There's a difference. There's a difference between looking at something somebody has and going, ooh, I wish I had that, and going, what can I do to take that away from that person? Right? What is the mantra with Israel right now by the Palestinian funded protests? From the river to the sea. We don't want, it's not a, we don't want what you have. It's just a little more sand than we already control. We don't want you to have it because of what you're doing with it. So here it is. Hatred of the good for being good. They do not want to own your fortune. They want you to lose it. This is the motivation here. They do not want to succeed. They want you to fail. They do not want to live. They want you to die. That's why they're martyrs. That's why they don't mind dying for this shit. They desire nothing. They hate existence. They're Gnostics. And they keep running, each trying not to learn that the object of his hatred is himself. That's the real truth that they'll never admit, and they'll kill you publicly in a gruesome fashion before even uttering any level of admittance. They are the essence of evil. Those anti-living objects who seek by devouring the world. This is the agenda, to devour the world, to fill the selfless zero of their soul. It is not your wealth that they're after. Theirs is a conspiracy against the mind, which means against life and man. See, there's people that are stuck in a medieval frame of mind, and they want you to be stuck with them in that frame of mind. And if you refuse to do it, as the West has allegedly always done up until this generation, who's like, no, come on, man, move next door. Come on, take it over. We don't give a shit. You know what? We hate ourselves. Take our shit. You hate yourself. We hate ourselves. Let's just team up. That's Islam. That's what it is. That's the real base of it. I'll probably get lynched for saying it, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. You got to read this. Secret Societies in the First International, and this is where shit gets really interesting, guys. You can get it. It's published by Stanford University Press. It's very academic. B.I. Nikolevsky was a curator of the Menshevik collection at the Hoover Institution, an active member of the Russian Social Democrat Party. He became director of the Moscow Marx Engels Institute after the Revolution of 1917. Deported from Russia in 1922, he later became director of the International Institute of Social History in Amsterdam. Just to give you a little background on who this guy is. Okay, now we get into the secret occult level. Okay, we're moving above the public square now. He says, secret societies, outwardly of Masonic form, because don't forget the Masons were also infiltrated by this cult. Okay. Played a decisive role in the forming of the First International. Does anybody know what that is? Please mark that down. The First International. And take it away. The struggle between the members and allies of these societies on one hand, and Karl Marx and his working class supporters on the other, constituted the inner life of the International in its early years, and in the end was responsible for its demise. You get that? Because of the importance and the complexity of the problem, and because it has been unexplored to date, I shall limit my essay to this rather narrow subject. So he's just going through about how important it is. He wanted to highlight that. Now, I'm not going through this, is a lot of reading. I already did this in the whole prezzo, but it's just basically giving you. Maybe I'll read the first bit because this will just do a good summary. He's saying this, talking about underground masonry. Freemasonry was never a unified movement, even within a particular country. It wasn't unified. Masonry had different sects and divisions as well. And did you know that a lot of these, Michael told me this history. He's like, when they went into Germany after the war, they found that a lot of the Masonic halls that were there that were very public. There was nothing sinister going on, at least to anybody's knowledge. And they were just literally sitting around studying the ancient mysteries. They were destroyed. They were outlawed. Their books were thrown to the ground into the streets. Some people picked up some of those books and went on to write lifetimes of work on what they found in there. That's another presentation. But and then only the top, the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, only certain rites, only certain temples remained after that purging that took place, because we already had the indication from people like the Duke of Brunswick and other royal figures of the time who let everybody know, hey guys, we've been sort of infiltrated by this ancient solar cult and they're running riot. And so we got to like dissolve our entire Masonic order to quarantine the thing, because basically communism is spreading amongst Masonry. They were trying to warn the aristocracy at the time, 1700s. 1700. What else was going on in 17? Oh, right. The founding of America during that period. So we can keep taking this back, but he's just talking about the first line, that there was no unified movement at the time that he's documenting this in Masonry. It's now a little bit more unified at the top, but all the dissenters were purged. This is even truer if we speak of the political role of Masonry. Did you even know Masonry had a political role? And particularly in France. France is an interesting place to look into in the period that interests us. That is the period in which the First International was formed. After the defeat of the revolutions of 1848 in all the countries of Western Europe, leadership of the official Masonic organizations passed into rightist hands. Of course, there are various shades of rightist leadership, but they were merely shades. So a lot of this was just smoke and mirrors. In France, Napoleon III established an undisguised dictatorship over Masonry, placing men he had personally selected at the head of its official organizations. And this happened a lot, guys, where they came in and they went, oh, you got some local drinking man study club going on? You know what? We think it's going to be good for our repurposing for political agendas. So we're going to put our guys at the top of those institutions. And they're going to wear the costume. They're going to do the rites with you. And they're going to be doing all the secret handshaking shit and talking about pyramids and stuff. But really, they're controlled by the top high table guys. So thanks for handing over the keys. So yeah, I don't want to go through the history again. It's just, there's so much. I'm just giving you teasers to hopefully whet your appetite. There it is. This is the quote. We've read it many times. Duke of Brunswick, Grand Master in Germany of Freemasonry, written to the Brethren in 1794. So this would have been after the founding of America. We see our edifice crumbling and covering the ground in ruins. We see the destruction that our hands no longer arrest. A great sect arose, which we're actually taking that apart on Enslaver right now. These fourth and fifth sects, these giant sects. A great sect arose, which taking for its motto, the good and the happiness of man. Listen to this guy from the 1700s, guys. This is the motto of the Illuminists. The good and happiness of man, equity, fraternity, liberty, worked in the darkness of the conspiracy, that was his word, not mine, to make the happiness of humanity a prey for itself. Notice he said prey, not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y. There's a big difference in the spelling. So the happiness of humanity was a prey for itself, meaning it was a carrot on a stick. This sect is known to everyone. He means everyone in the circle. Everybody knows about this sect, this communist sect. Its brothers are known no less than in name. It is they who have undermined the foundations of the order to the point of complete overthrow. It is by them that all humanity has been poisoned and led astray for several generations. They began casting odium on religion. Their masters had nothing less in view than the thrones of the earth, and the governments of the nations was to be directed by their nocturnal clubs. Some John Wick shit. The misuse of our order has produced all the political and moral troubles with which the world is filled today. We must from this moment dissolve the whole order. Do you guys understand the gravity of this statement and how, like, this blows my mind every time I read it, because this is 1794. It's a duke. This isn't some guy on the street with the world is going to end or a raised fist. This is like, and he saw it. He's like, he just described communism and totalism in general. He just described that's where, and we're talking 1794 in the bellies of these secret societies. He wrote it to warn his German brothers. Don't forget the alliance Michael brought up between Germany and Turkey. They always have had an alliance. Turkey, Ottoman Empire. Now you understand the Shriners with the the Middle Eastern scimitar and star and crescent, even the symbols of Islam. What is that? Where does it come from? Ancient cults. Christianity, same thing. Judaism, it's all symbolism. Not that the original canon of, and I've done this in the religious, comparative religious shows on the Bible Decoded or these ancient scriptures decoded. The original was pure. It was something passed down from our forefathers to all nations of the world to get everybody in tune with the mystery and with God and divinity and how to build culture, how to build civilization. These are the wise sages of old, right? But then it got corrupted by priestly cabals, just like the Masonic orders got corrupted by priestly cabals that you're being warned about by one of its top dogs. That's amazing connection. So it's look at the ideology. He described it. The good and happiness of man is a cover story. It's a facade. They know they're not going to walk in and go, "Hey guys, here's the real deal." Okay? We want to destroy your civilization. We want to get rid of your upward trajectory. We're going to destroy the Persian Empire, never let it bloom. We're going to destroy the German Empire, never let it bloom. We'll put our National Socialists in there to banjax that. We're going to take down America from day one by installing literally having the Bavarian Illuminati faction founded on the same day America was founded. And then you got the 18 whatever hundreds Banking Act and all that shit with the constitutional fraud that took place for America. We're seeing it happen today. We just had a crash course during COVID. We got Klaus Schwab up there telling you the whole freaking thing going, "Hey, we penetrate cabinets. Here's how it goes," right? They've been penetrating cabinets for thousands of years, these people. What's the difference? Do these people have time travel devices? Or are we talking about ideological descendants and maybe even some genetic bloodline descendants? That's another theory. But either way, same ideas, same bad ideas that are they're an infectious agent. It's a mind virus that captures the human mind, that it's almost like we're genetically predisposed to, which could bring up the whole slave species thing, but that's a different one as well. I'm just thinking out loud here, but you're getting warned. So if Islam can get taken by this, if the Vatican can get taken by this, go read Michael Tsarion's article, The Red Papacy, right on his website. I'll put a link if you want. If Judaism can get taken by this, right? Got the whole history of some of those sects. Michael brought up that, and he was trying to make it very clear. We're talking about elite black magicians that took sacred knowledge and symbolism and warped and twisted it towards a political agenda. And when we're getting in the Masonic houses as well, same thing. If you're out there right now and you're talking about, I don't know, some socialist Jews in Israel or something you don't like in America with that, and you're not giving the full story about what I'm telling you about the fact that it's not about a genetic people in that regard, or it's not about just one religion and every adherent in those religions. It's not about every single Mason. It's not about every single Christian or Catholic person or even every Jesuit. It's not every person working in the CIA. It's not every person working in the government or the military that's involved in this conspiracy to overthrow the West and install this cult ideology, this ancient cult ideology that's been rebranded for modern times. It's all of it. It's a multi-headed hydra. And the real movers and shakers at the top, this is the way I see it, they don't eat from any of those plates. They're not part of the Masonic stuff. They're not part of they don't like themselves. They have their own private form of belief, worship, allegiance. They're flying above it all. They're a breakaway civilization that you know nothing about. They have their own doctrines. They're secret for a reason. They're underground for a reason. Now, we've cracked the case, I think, on Unslaved as to who exactly it is and what the ideology really is to the best of our ability. But when you're getting these pundits out there right now, especially on the MAGA conservative side, that are now betraying the West by siding with the enemy and not realizing what they're doing in many cases, I'm sure. Maybe some others. We could talk about some interesting funding sources, but that's a different thing. They're missing the bigger story is all. And it's sad to see. Sad to see so many falling for it. But here we are. You don't have to fall for it anymore now that you're armed with the facts and now you know what's going on. And then we get into the Lodge of the Philadelphians. That, and then, like, I haven't done this presentation in a while, but it just is popping out at me here. That what is this? The history of this order is obscure, this historian is saying. Historians of Masonry do not accord it much attention or sympathy, and as a matter of fact, much of its history is contradictory and incomprehensible. Well, that's because there's a lot of chicanery and Black Widow shit going on. An odd mixture of pseudo-Eastern mysticism and obvious leftist political sympathies on the parts of the leaders of the order leaves a strange impression. As a rule, the left wing of Freemasonry tried to lead the movement away from mysticism in the name of rationalism and free thought and insisted on simplification of its statutes. And then the Philadelphians had a completely different outlook. So you're talking about a little internecine war that went on between the right wing and the left wing in Masonry. And it's kind of hinging on this discussion of an odd mixture between pseudo-Eastern mysticism and obvious leftist political sympathies. I like that there when I'm talking Islamo-Communism, because communism is thought of something that came out of the West, which it didn't. It's as age old as history. It's just had different redrafts and rebrands over time. It's a cult ideology. And it is a mixture of Eastern mysticism, just like Templarism and everything else, right? And leftist political sympathies. There's your diagnosis, guys. Keep on the lookout for it from now on. That's the poison pill. It's not about Jews, Muslims, Christians, liberals, conservatives, all that superficial public square labeling. It's what do the priestly cabal believe? What are they injecting into the veins of all the institutions that they're doing the long march through? It's that. I just showed you right from them, right from the top dogs. There's a couple of more points and then I can get in. Yeah, I got some pretty interesting stuff in here that I've been collecting over the years. Yeah, lots of reading about the Philadelphians, conspiratorial organizations and political terrorism. Getting into France, like that whole chapter, just the title alone, conspiratorial organizations and political terrorism. That's enough. That's what we've been dealing with for hundreds of years in the West, thousands of years as a planet, and it's happening on your doorstep right now in your government. Your governments have been captured by this enemy that will recruit from all these different splinter groups of people, but they'll put the same Gatorade at the base of the ingredient list of their little doctrines. Everybody thinks they're fighting with each other on the surface. Oh, those communists and those fascists, they really hate each other. Yeah. Okay. They're the same person. Communism fomented in secret societies. What was that, Dr. Kerry Bolton? What did you just say? Communism was fermented in secret societies and then given to the political social world? I didn't know that secret societies were a thing. I thought that was just a conspiracy theory. So, yeah, there you go. That's enough presentations. Wow, I got through all that in an hour. I'm very proud of myself for that. So go watch all those presentations individually if you want to get all the nuts and bolts, and also do the occult conspiracy. That is a really, really important one here. Also, about the occult conspiracy, there's a little bit in that, I think it's in part 2, where I show the symbolism in Hollywood about all this stuff, because these people love bragging and it's part of their religion. So they put it in all the media. They put it in everything. And they're telling you about, in John Wick, the movies, they're telling you a lot if you know what you're doing there. I could probably spend some time just taking you scene by scene on some of those films and going, holy smoke. My mind was blown watching those movies, because not just because the action was good and I love martial arts, and I mean, who doesn't love flying triangle chokes? It's more because of all the symbolism that they just injected everywhere and told you the history, that the history Michael broke down for you. Yeah, they tell you that also in the John Wick movies. And they tell you this story of the Eastern faction and the connection between the Russian faction and the Eastern faction. Because don't forget, John Wick as a character represents this double-headed eagle Russian group that is a group of what? Assassins. Well, who are the assassins? Right? The Templars. Where does the double-headed eagle symbol come from? Does it come from Russia? Does it come from Germany? Because Germany uses it too. Where did they get it from? Wait, so Russia has the connection to through the Chechens to the Eastern faction. Germany through the Turks and the Ottomans to the Eastern faction. So where did they get the symbol from again? Well, the Templars, when they were doing the Crusades, they were finding these symbols of the double-headed eagle on all these old carvings on all these buildings. There's even I think there's a church in Ethiopia or something that has some of those carvings on it as well, which is really weird, that people think was built by the Templars. So there you go. John Wick, what does he do? He goes over to where? The sand dunes of the Middle East to go meet some prince, some Saudi oil prince baron, who's like one of the top guys in the high table. He's got to get his finger chopped off. The guy gives him some signet ring, swears an allegiance. It's crazy. They're giving you that story. So I do cover that in my occult conspiracy presentation. But now I want to show you some videos. Let's move on to more of a modern era now. We're going to get into the work of Trevor Loudon. I just played the trailer to his film in the last show. I'm not going to play it again, but I do want to play you some clips from the interview that is up on Unslaved that we did with Trevor Loudon in 2016. And I got some comments after each clip. Each clip is just a few minutes. So let's start with clip number 1. Here we go.
Yeah, well, look, I regard the election of President Trump as a miraculous reprieve. You know, we all knew Hillary Clinton was going to win. The left were absolutely certain she was going to win, and when she didn't, they went absolutely ballistic, and that has never stopped. See, the thing with President Trump is, you know, the big enforcement mechanism for the Marxist agenda in America is political correctness. You know, you're only allowed to say certain things in certain ways, and anything else will invite a barrage of bricks and stones and, you know, articles thrown your way. You'll be criticized out of existence. So Trump blew a big hole in that, and that really resonated with the American people, and particularly over the issue of illegal immigration. You know, people understand that it's destroying the country, and it had to be stopped. So the reason why the left is so absolutely apoplectic over Trump is very simple. They were on the verge of creating a one-party state in America, and I'll explain why. Now, Hillary Clinton promised that she was going to legalize every single illegal immigrant in the country within 100 days of taking office, give them all citizenship and voting rights. Now, there are between 12 and 40 million illegals in the United States. We know on past patterns they will vote approximately 80% Democrat. So that would have given the Democrat Party between 10 and 24, 25, 26 million new voters. Now, considering that Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million and Donald Trump won by less than 200,000 votes, you can see what an extra 10 to 24 million votes would have done for the Democratic Party. You would have had a permanent governing majority forever. And the Democratic Party, since about 1994, when the Marxists took over the AFL-CIO, the American Labor Union movement, has been completely under the control of the Marxists. So you would have had a Marxist one-party state within 100 days of Hillary Clinton taking office. So that's how close America was to destruction. So I regard the Trump election as a miracle. I regard it as a reprieve. It's not a whole change in direction. It's one last shot to save this country. And I'm sure, as you know, David, if America ever goes down, Canada, Australia, Britain, all the Western European countries will follow. So really what we were looking at was the destruction of the Western world here. And Donald Trump has given us one last shot to save it, and we better get on board on doing it, because one or two bad elections and we're back to square one or even worse.
So now you see why I don't give a shit about mean tweets or what people think about this, because they're just not understanding the true nature of the threat that we face and just how the glitch in the matrix the Trump presidency is. First term, second term, even if he did half of the things, even the people that are all upset that he hasn't done all the things yet. I mean, I'm like, okay, I'm still happy about the fact that we're even having this conversation right now. Right. So anyways, what I really wanted to show you with that clip was basically he's describing an age-old strategy by how you take over a country from within. You can't take them on militarily. China has to use irregular warfare policies to attack the West. So do the Islamic regimes, the terrorist network regimes. So do all of them have to. They have to use these cloak and dagger tactics to get this to happen. And it's being done by deception. Do you see why we can call it a conspiracy? It's a criminal conspiracy. It's actually a violation of the Constitution for any politician in America to be allowing for basically a planned invasion of people to come in, bed up behind the gates, start causing terrorist havoc and child trafficking and all kinds of craziness, and then drain out the economy, drain out the coffers. And the main reason is the voting base, because it's what they're being offered. These people come in, they're just pawns in the game. They don't understand the people coming in, they're being used. And it makes you wonder why they aren't fighting in their own countries to make their countries mirror the policies of America. Instead, they're coming to America, which has always been interesting to me. But just to kind of what Trevor was saying there, Canadians, listen up. He's described what has been achieved, I think, in Canada. I don't even think they have to necessarily do any kind of election fraud here, because they've already brought in, look at the graphs of immigration coming in, whether it's legal, whether it's illegal. In Canada, we're getting overburdened by legal immigration as well, where it's like, you see the graph and it's like from the 80s and then like late, 2015 or something, and then up and 20. It's just like poof, big giant spike under Trudeau. What are they doing? This comes from the United Nations. This comes from the high table in Switzerland about how to do this. And you're going, well, why would Swiss people, why would Europeans want to destroy Europe? Why would the EU, founded by Nazis, why would it want the destruction of its own backyard? What's with this Ursula's and these, what's with these white leaders that are precipitating the fall of Western countries? And no, they're not all Jewish. I'm sorry. There's many, many that are involved at the highest levels that come from diverse backgrounds, but they're Europeans nonetheless. What is it? Is it suicidal empathy? Is it being misinformed? Is it ignorance? Or is it an agenda? Are these people hand-selected by these fraternal orders to be put into those positions? And they're in bed with Carlyle and Bilderberg and Chatham House that Mark Carney was formerly a president of. What is this? Why would they do that? It's the ideology. They're cultists. They drank the Kool-Aid. They're useless. They're useful idiots. They're blackmailed. There's a whole host of reasons why this is happening, but it kind of doesn't matter because my eyes are on who's really pushing this agenda. It's actually a combined effort by a bunch of alliances that have taken place. That's the real story here. That all want to see the end of Western freedom and Western principles. And they don't want just to take what we've got. They just don't want us to have it. They want it. They want us gone. So what you do is you bring in these predatory ideologies that come in and go, we're the dominant religion in the world. Our holy book is the one. Our God is the God. Our way is the way. Our laws are going to be your laws. And then how do you, this was another major point that Michael made again and again in that show. How do you square the unholy alliance between radical 12er Shia Islam and feminism? You got the lead actresses from Sex and the City in New York crying with tears of joy that a Shia socialist Muslim was just elected as the mayor. How do you explain this? How do you explain Queers for Palestine? If you're in the LGBT community and you go anywhere in the Middle East, anywhere, they're going to be doing gravity experiments with you. That's kind of what they think of you, you know? So how do you square that? How do you square all these white liberal women clapping with glee as they're bringing in these strong Islamic young men that are all military fighting age through all the borders of Europe and America and Canada and Australia? And they have no idea in the world what they're welcoming in with open arms. It's shocking to see, but you're not going to understand it. This was Michael's point. And there were many other contradictions like that, like all these supposedly MAGA conservative influencers, literally using the exact same sound bites and phrases and arguments as the radical woke left. The same. It's the ideology. That's the common denominator. Next clip. I can't remember where we go with it, but I'm sure it's good. Clip number 2. Let's take it away, Mr. Trevor Loudon.
Yes, the American education system has been compromised since the 1920s, even before that, as has American journalism. You know, that after World War II, most journalists started to be trained rather than on the job, like, you know, journalist cadets as they were before World War II. They were trained in the journalism colleges, and they were indoctrinated by people like, I've forgotten his name now, McIntosh, I think his name was, who wrote the books on advocacy journalism, a Marxist. So you've got millions of, well, most Americans have been so indoctrinated in the public school systems for the last 50 years, they really have no understanding of their roots. And it has really ramped up in the last 20 years. So you've got all these socialist millennials out there who will just fall for any line. And so this is, you've got the Democratic Party controlled by communists, a whole bunch of kids who really don't know the foundations of their country and are all soft Marxists at heart.
And this is the prediction of some of the guys in the Soviet Union. Can't remember all their names. Some of the Ayatollahs and the Islamic extremists in the Middle East. We're going to take the minds of your children and turn your countries into our countries before you even know it. Like there's decades of quotes like this. And here we are. I mean, you kind of got to take these people pretty seriously because they take themselves very seriously. And I just find it funny that we think, oh, that'll never happen. And we just keep moving on. What's Kim Kardashian doing these days? When's the next UFC card? Right? That's all that really occupies most people's minds. What flag am I supposed to be waving right now? Well, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, while we sleep, this kind of stuff's happening.
And if you look, today, people say there's no communism in America. Well, what the heck is Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is complete creation of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, a pro-Chinese, pro-North Korean outfit. Very influential. They are very influential in the Ford Foundation and a lot of the Soros groups. I think they have a budget of at least $50 million a year, if not more, through donations and grants and government handouts, etc. And they are working with the Palestinians. They have connections to the Russians. They have connections to the Cubans. Then the Occupy movement was a complete communist movement. The Me Too movement, the Women's marches are all completely controlled by communists. Communism has never been stronger in America, in my opinion, than it is today. But nobody dares name the word. Nobody calls it for what it is. So people see Antifa, they see Black Lives Matter, they see the Women's March with 1 million women in Washington, D.C., and they don't realize this is communism. They don't know that that's what it is. So therefore they think, communism is just a Che Guevara T-shirt, nothing more.
It's just a short point about, again, that I've said for years, that even our little conspiracy movement here, which started off as very conservative with J. Edward Griffin, Eustace Mullins, and some fine thinkers, a lot of Christians, a lot of people on the right, you can barely find anymore now. People like ourselves are just treading water because it's absolutely been infested. So again, there's empirical evidence for what Trevor's saying.
Exactly. I don't even know what else to add to that. That was just very well summarized. As they were talking, he brought up, this was 2016, mind you, he brought up the fact that Black Lives Matter and the funding sources were working with Palestine. He's talking about the groups that are basically really holding Palestine hostage there, which is this Marxist Islamo-Communist faction that most likely has handshaking insiders in the Israeli government working with it. I don't know. That's something we can get into with the radical left there, because these guys have penetrated everywhere. So there's a whole thing going on there that's just not being taken into consideration. But either way, when we say Palestine, what are we talking about? Extension of the Ottoman Empire, right? Going back to these old connections that nobody's been informed about. And it just jogged my memory about something I covered a couple of years ago in relation to what was going down with the pandemic. And let me just bring it up and you'll see what I'm talking about. This was something that took place in September of 2023, just a typical World Health Organization meeting. It was the 6th meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body to draft and negotiate a WHO Convention, agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. So this was when they were formulating the treaty that the world was supposed to sign, that we were all supposed to sign on to. I think Canada did. That Trump said, no, fuck that. And interesting that we have the relevant stakeholders here that are a part of that meeting and agreement. And these are what are known as the observers on that list, on that meeting notes page on the site. I took these screenshots myself, and you go through and you go, this is the details I look for, the fine print, right? You go, what are these observers? They have to have these observers for the signatory process when it comes to these agreements, right? Well, look who the observers are. Look who's number one on the list. The Holy See. Interesting, they call it See, like S-E-E, the all-seeing eye, number one. Number two, the Holy See is the Vatican. Okay. Knights of Malta, that's their military, the progenitors of Western medicine. I did that in Cult of the Medics. You guys already know that. So Order of Malta is number 4. Bill Gates's Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, is number 3. Now, I don't know if these are rank ordered. It's just, I thought that was interesting. Number 2 is what? I'm like, what? Palestine? Poverty-stricken Palestine is number 2 on the observers list in the World Health Organization for overseeing a pandemic treaty. You got also look at these other number 5, International Committee of the Red Cross. And then to talk more about the liaisons between East and West, Templars and Sultans, we've got the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Yeah, they're medical societies. They just do charity. They go help out people in war zones. Yeah, of course. You got to do many charitable works. But they're sitting on the World Health Organization. They're sitting on the United Nations Security Councils. They're part of these are public societies. What about the secret societies behind them, using occult ancient symbols as their symbolism? I got questions about that. So I don't know. Interesting things to notice. Let's go to the next video. Here we go. Number 4.
Talking of South America and the Jesuits, South America is now a hotbed of some of the most radical Islamic. I'm thinking here of Paul Williams's thesis, but the bringing in not only of massive amounts of drugs.
Sorry to cut Michael off there, but he did say there was a bit of a glitch on my end. I don't know if you guys heard it. I want to replay it because he says something here, and I want to give you guys a reference. So let's just do this from the beginning. It's coming.
Talking of South America and the Jesuits, South America is now a hotbed of some of the most radical Islamic. I'm thinking here of Paul Williams's thesis, but the bringing in not only of massive amounts of drugs that the Muslims have actually, people would find it hard to understand that the radical Muslims are now deeply entrenched with the drug barons of South America. That's one conversation, but
so he's bringing this up. He's like, that's one conversation. He's just bringing up something to add to this question, and he'll get to the question. But he was talking about the Jesuits in South America and the connections to these Islamic extremist networks and the drug cartels in South America. We did a show on Unslaved with my good friend David Genny, who's a Venezuelan patriot. He's actually been sending me some good info on Islam as well, because the Venezuelans know all about this. And Michael was just talking about that. So we did a show with on Unslaved that you can also look up on the Jesuits in Caracas and the fomenting of the communism that infested itself in Latin America. And David Genny is one of the most informed people I've ever talked to about that. So definitely go and check out that interview on Unslaved. But he's asking the question here, and here's Trevor's response.
Also, they're bringing in, possibly according to Paul Williams, nuclear weapons that can be concealed in suitcases. What's your take on this bizarre hybridization here of South American drug lords and gun runners and radical Islam? Can you give us a thumbnail on that one?
Well, it's a 3-part alliance, because you've got the communist terrorist groups like FARC in Colombia, and they are allied with the narco-terrorists, and they're allied with Hezbollah. And they're all smuggling drugs, they're all smuggling weapons and human and people into the United States.
Sorry, did he just say there's a 3-part alliance? You got Hezbollah involved, and they're all smuggling weapons, drugs, and people. Trump has been he's been talking about this since his first administration. And we got into the whole human trafficking angle. You want to know where that originated? Go study the history of these old caliphates in the ancient world, the history of the Islamic slave trade, and what your ancestors and mine suffered will blow your mind. We're not taught about this. It's the one taboo subject you're not taught about. You're taught about slavery from a couple hundred years ago, completely out of context with the fact that slavery was a worldwide practice and the most brutal forms of it come from guess where?
And we know that a large number of people slipping across the border are other than Mexicans. They're people from Lebanon, are people from the Middle East. They are flooding the country with bad guys, drugs, and weaponry. Well, they ain't doing it for fun. You know, this is a concerted effort between, you know, backed by Iran, backed by other terrorist groups, working with the...
You said backed by Iran. This is 2016. Okay. We did this interview. Backed by Iran, major terrorist funding hotbed. And they're bringing them in, and they have been for some time. What do you think it's like to be president of the United States right now, knowing this information plus classified military intelligence on top of that? This is just what you can get from just research. What about the classified level that's known that you have to take on the deep state corruption, thwart the enemies externally and internally, and do this while not lighting a civil war, which would be financed immediately and put into the front by these Soros and other groups to muddy the pot, so that America doesn't go up in a tinderbox because of all of the weaponry that's been smuggled in by this nexus. You want to know why there's optics? You want to know why there's a bit of a movie being played right now? You want to know why Trump has to take certain public positions one day and then change them another day and then do things different? It's because you don't understand the nature of the threat that's happening. That's why people don't get it. They don't know in America and in Canada that we are at war, and we have been at war in this war, this clandestine war, for a long time. And it's just now bubbling to the surface. That's the only reason anybody's paying attention. And they think, oh, now there's some wars. This is an age-old feud that the world doesn't know about, right?
Communist terrorists in Latin America who are backed by the Venezuelan and Cuban and probably Ecuadorian governments, you know, working to basically subvert America through the southern border. You know, that's the Democrats have kept the southern border open for two reasons. One is to flood the country with new Democratic voters. One is to flood the country with communist and Muslim agents who are getting ready for the revolution and terrorist activity. So yeah, that's an absolutely huge problem. And the communists, the drug lords, and the Islamist terrorists are all completely allied to basically just do everything they can to damage this country.
So there's the breakdown on the alliances, and he goes into more detail in the actual episode. You got to watch that episode, and you have to watch his film, The Enemy Within. I got one more. Last one from Trevor here. It's coming up here. One sec. Like I say, got a little bit of dead air before the video starts. My apologies.
You got to see the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the main driver of the movement in the West, was trained by the KGB, and they were trained in
Sorry, they were trained by who? The KGB? Oh, okay. Let's bring in the Yuri Bezmenov thing now. Okay, take it away.
You see, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the main driver of the movement in the West, was trained by the KGB, and they were trained in influence operations.
Sorry, did he say they were trained in influence operations? They were trained in influence operations. That's interesting. With all these influencers influencing things and not for the good. not towards the truth. All these psyops. Take notes.
You know, the Gorbachev style shaking hands and smiling and we're your friends now and all this garbage. They are trained in this stuff. You know, you've got to understand, if you believe in Sharia law, if you believe in the tenets of Islam, you are commanded to spread God's word across the globe, and that is by force or fraud or any way you can do it. You know,
it makes sense. All ideological cult extremists believe this. All these cults I'm talking about, they all believe it. They believe in the faith. They're blinded by the light. They've got the fire of the minds lit. The revolutionary faith has been activated. The weaponized resentment and greed and the 7 deadly sins have been activated. And you got to get it. And the Masons say, by hook or by crook, we'll take power. The young Turks, the young Italy, by hook or by crook. And same with the Islamists. Hey, by any means necessary, we're going to play parts. We're allowed to lie. We can, come in. This is an imperialist history. Yet the left, who's anti-imperialist, is their best buddies. Sex and the City stars are like, yay, right? What? Because the democratic Marxists are the same too. By hook or by crook, by lie, by infiltration, by any, and then what JFK warned us about, the big threat is infiltration instead of invasion. Put it all together, guys. You're going to you understand what's going on, all right.
A Christian gets to heaven by repenting and being, and saving themselves and doing good works and believing in Jesus Christ. A Muslim gets to heaven by sacrificing himself to spread God's word by force or fraud or any means necessary. Islam is a political system. That's what we have to understand. It's not a religion in the sense of Buddhism or Hinduism. It is primarily political. And I'd just like to make a point here. When I came to the United States, I had to swear an oath that I'd never been involved in any communist or Nazi organization that sought to overthrow the U.S. Constitution. Now, that is not racist or anti-religion, but if you believe in Sharia law, which is the central law of Islam dictated by Allah, that basically means you are obligated to spread Sharia across the globe. Now, that means you are in direct opposition to the United States Constitution and seek to undermine or overthrow it. If I can't come to America because I'm a Nazi or a communist, why should I be allowed into the country if I support Sharia law? What is the difference?
Now, I would add to that all of these institutions have been turned into political movements by way of the fact that they were infiltrated by this communism that came out of the bellies of secret societies. That is an occult ancient doctrine that has now just been upgraded and morphed to fit the time in which it was presented. And the time it was presented in the 1700s, it was a little different than the time it's being presented right now. And there's a different flavor in the Middle East than you'll find in, say, Russia or Poland or other places, a slight variations because they have to tailor it to the local demographics, right? But he's just highlighting the fact that he's like, look, if we have them admitting, and we're talking about these extremists that are on it, they're out there on the pulpits all over UK right now, talking about exactly this. We're going to replace you demographically by high birth rates compared to your low birth rates. And all of this, because their dream is to have their ideology, the dominant ideology. Everybody wants to be on the winning team. And all the other religions have been trying to fight for the same thing. And so they're warring at each other. So when the high table looks at all this natural warring going on amongst humanity, All they're doing is putting their spin on their own religions and turning them on each other so you can create the Game of Thrones division that allows the White Walker force to creep over the gates while everybody's tearing each other to bits from the inside out. Divide and conquer, age old. Novus Ordo Seclorum, you know? So there's the clips. I want to wrap this quick, so I'm just going to zip through these. Let me just pull up something I've been talking about on X. Give that a minute to populate here. Okay, so we're in. Hey, look, we're live right now, right on X. Okay, so I was talking about this. So keeping it current, this is what's going on. We have the election of Zohran Mamdani. He's a Shia Muslim identifying with the Twelver branch. We'll get to that. And guess who is one of the top Shia Twelvers in the world? It's the Iranian Ayatollah Ali Khamenei or whatever. Khamenei. And this is something we need to start looking at. Okay, like start looking at this. So I said, okay, let's look at it. We got that guy going in. He did just get elected. He won the primary. Everybody, you know, and Trump calls him right out. Where is it? Yeah, I think Trump knows about Islamo-Communism because he's not being soft. He's not going, oh, he's a democratic socialist. No, he's a communist lunatic who just won the Dem primary, and he's got all the support of the AOC plus 3 dummies all backing him, and even our great Palestinian senator crying Chuck Schumer is groveling over him. Yeah, big moment. So he's just having his little fun with that, but it's true, his assessment, I think. And everybody's, of course, defending him. We got Bill Clinton supporting him. Like, all the right people are supporting him. That's how you can know. When you find yourself identifying with the likes of AOC, Nancy Pelosi, the whole Democratic deep state, you may want to look yourself in the mirror. When you're identifying with the positions of people like George Soros, etc., you might want to ask some questions. Now, before we get to the Twelver branch, I just want to pull this up. Let's see if I can get it even bigger. Yeah. Do you see it yet? Do you see the symbolism? These are the flags. David Genny sent this to me. I can't remember the area that he saw this planted, but these are the kind of flags that I'm starting to see in Toronto and other places. The symbolism's right there. Right? You got the Islamic symbolism, you got the olive branch, and you got the communist symbols with the raised fist. There's your Islamo-Communism symbolism right in your face. Symbolism doesn't lead you astray. Now, a quick little check. Oh, do I still have my grok up here? Yeah, okay. I'll just read this out. I asked grok. You can go look it up on here. This is just the Wikipedia on Twelver Shiaism, also known as, man, I can't even pronounce that, is the largest branch of Shia Islam, comprising about 90% of all Shia Muslims. They believe in 12 divinely appointed leaders, interesting number 12, once again, known as the 12 Imams, with the last Imam, Muhammad al-Mahdi, currently in occupation, current, let's how they put it, currently in occultation, meaning the astrological symbolism of an occulted sun or moon. He's in hiding and expected to return as the awaited Mahdi. So it's a savior religion. It's a revolutionary savior messianic religion. Okay. Now, I know the basis of where all these things came from, which is astrotheology, but they don't know that. They're mixing theology with history. And they've been raised by these priest cabals. But here is the grok breakdown. So just a couple little points. I said, give me a concise breakdown of the beliefs of Shia Twelver Islam. Don't hold back. So yeah, they believe in prophethood. God sent prophets culminating in Muhammad to guide humanity. Muhammad's teachings are preserved in the Quran and authentic hadith. That is, of course, the immutable word of God, according to them. The 12 imams, starting with Ali and a bunch of others, and are ending with Mahdi, are divinely appointed, infallible. They're all infallible, guys. All the leaders are infallible, and who possess spiritual and temporal authority. They interpret Islamic law and guide the community. Wouldn't you love to have the power of the priesthood, eh? They really know how to grab you and pull you right in like the mafia. And once you get in, you try to get out, they pull you back in. They believe in the afterlife, of course. Now, devotion to the imams is essential, as they are seen as intermediaries between God and humanity with unique spiritual knowledge. Now, they see that it's all in all the other religions too. There's your vicars. Occultation. This is the 12th Imam al-Mahdi is in occultation. He's hidden since 874 CE. He's been hidden for a while. We're all waiting for all the messiahs to return. Christianity is waiting for the Messiah to return. The Jews are waiting for the Messiah, and Islam is waiting for the Messiah. We'll see which Messiah makes it first. And there's all about the Day of Judgment. Sharia, Islamic law, governs personal and communal life. Communal life? Communism? Derived from the Quran, Hadith, and rulings of the Imams. Jurists guide in the Imam's absence. So they, mourning and martyrdom. Dissimulation, permissible concealment of faith to protect life or community. That's interesting. So, yeah, just give you an idea of the admitted ideology of the new New York mayor. And of course, the fact that he's admitted, it's like on his X profile, a democratic socialist. That's the soft form of communist. So we've got the connection between Islam, specifically Shia 12er Islam, particular sect, and socialism. Pairing together, selling it to the Western audience in New York, ground zero of 2001, 9/11. We're now going to bring the enemy. We're going to bring the enemy ideology right in with the help of the Democrats, with the help of the Rhino Republicans, right? We're going to bring them in and we're going to supplant. And the one reason why the Sex and the City star is out there clapping and cheering and crying is because this guy has a shot at taking down Trump, according to her. So that's the big takedown we need. So people who believe in kings and divinely appointed prophets and the return of messiahs, they're coming in, and everybody is protesting no more kings because they just don't like Trump. But they'll bring in these kings. Let's import them from the Middle East and reinstall the caliphate again. That's their mantra, right? It's unbelievable. So you won't understand this tangled mess unless you understand ancient cults, how they operate, what they're really all about, where they came from, how they got corrupted, how there was the same mind parasite captured the Masonic institutions, the aristocracy of Europe, all the major religions, institutional level, the political level, right? And it is now spreading. And there's many forms that it takes, but it's the same. I'm trying to show you guys it's the same ideology at the root. That's the enemy. Not Arab peoples, not Persian peoples, not Jewish peoples, not Christian peoples, not Western peoples. Specifically, we're talking ideology that has the ability to capture your mind and turn you into a slave or keep you a slave. It's based in the hatred of the good for being good. There's the psychological aspect of it. And then there's all kinds of occult underpinnings that are there to attract your mind to it. And it's very easy to recruit the average human who has no idea about this. It's the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. And all you need to know about these ideologies is to study the blueprint and the track record. So if you want to know what's it like living under Islamic rule, just go study what it's like. What's it like living under communist rule? Go study the history. What about even the socialists? Aren't they a little bit better? What was it, Lenin or whatever? It was like, yeah, socialism is just the doorway to communism. What's it like living under the fascists? Aren't they just totally different? Nope. It's still a totalitarian cult that has occult roots, Thule Society, etc. Right? Mussolini was a Knight of Malta. There's your so it just keeps going. We got the Buddhists in there. We got the Marxists in Tibet talking about pedophilia running rampant in the church. You have no idea when it comes to what's going on in those temples and shrines over there. And then when you talk about slavery, modern slavery still exists. I'm talking about physical slavery. I did this in chapter 10 of Cult of the Medics, talking about that. And we've been warned. We've been warned by many authors and people who lived in the gulags and concentration camps in the 21st century. We've been warned from oracles from the past and historians from the past about what happens when you get in bed with people that have this ideology, this revolutionary faith ideology. And then we've been warned in modern times by the people that we brought up here. And you were just warned yesterday by Michael Tsarion, maybe for one last time, depending on how things go. So there you have it, guys. The beginner's guide to the history of Islamo-Communism. And there's so many other places that this dovetails into. I just want to emphasize that we're talking about an occult doctrine. It's an ancient doctrine that's been modernized and morphed and changed to suit the demographics by which it is used, and also to suit the times in which it finds itself, and to essentially be the poison pill that will take down Western civilization and the freedom of human beings. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of exposing that. So that's what I'm doing here today. So I hope you got something out of that. I hope you guys took some notes. We'll do more on this in the future if you guys are interested. Don't just trust influencers that you like, that said some things that you like. Don't even trust me. Go to the sources, go to the horse's mouth, do your own diligence, inform your mind. Truth wins. This isn't a popularity contest, guys. This is about what's real, what's not, what's true, what's false. And we need to sharpen our discernment, critical thinking skills, pattern recognition, symbolic literacy, and knowledge of history. That's what we need to work on, in my opinion. I'm talking to myself. I got to work on it too. But this is the research I have thus far, and I hope it gave you some value today. So thanks for tuning in, guys. If you found some value, help me out. Share this out. Help me beat these shadow banning algorithms, and I will do some more for you in the future. Check out Unslaved, and we'll catch everybody soon. Cheers.